Hello, this is Fiona Mullen from Sapienta Economics. In my last video, I looked at the population of Russians in the Republic of Cyprus, by which I mean the southern part of the island. And I concluded that there could not possibly be 50,000 Russians, even if you included all of the tourists who might be here on any given day. Now, some of you commented that maybe when people said 50,000 Russians, they meant people who were born in the former Soviet Union. So today I'm going to have a look at those figures. So what do we mean by the former Soviet Union? There were 15 countries. So it's not former, let's say, Soviet influence. It's not Bulgaria, Romania. There are some Bulgarians, Romanians, many living in Cyprus. It's not former Yugoslavia, Serbia, etc. This is just people who were in the Soviet Socialist Republic. So that's Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, importantly Georgia, which we'll get onto later, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and so on. So apologies to anybody who is insulted by this, but this is just an intellectual exercise of what if you somehow mixed up Russians with former Soviet Union. So just to recap, last time the census in 2021 said that there were 16,412 people who were born in Russia, who were living here, long-term residents of Cyprus, in the census of 2021. And citizens was less because some of those would be dual nationals. And I concluded that if you added all the tourists as well on any given day, so you take the number of tourists in the peak year of 2019, when there was no COVID or sanctions, you multiply by the average length of stay, you divide by 365, you got around 20,000 tourists on any given day from Russia in Cyprus. And then you add the number from the census. So we know it was 16,412 in 2021. I knocked off 1% per year to get us to just over 36,000 in 2019 of long-term residents and tourists from Russia on any given day in Cyprus. Now what happens if you add everybody from the former Soviet Union? So we go to Cystat, we add Georgia, Ukraine, scroll down all the others. And what does that give us? So we have our Russians, which we knew from before. We have almost 10,000 Georgians. We have 5,500 or more from Ukraine, and so on, right? If it's not listed, it means they just weren't here, okay? So not surprisingly, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, they're much closer to countries like Turkey than they are to the Greek Cypriots. So what does that give us? That in the population census of 2021, long-term residents of 12 months or more from the former Soviet Union, so born in the former Soviet Union, there were about 38,000. But, and this is where I think it's kind of cheating if you include Georgia. Why? Because I've lived here about 20 plus years, and there are a lot of Georgians here, but they are typically not the oligarchs. You're going to find them in healthcare, you're going to find them in the bakeries, you're going to find them in the shops, in the kiosks. They are not typically living in a villa, driving a fast car, nor are they typically working for the oligarchs, let's say. Okay, so including Georgians is really not legitimate, in my view. So what if we have a, let's say, broader definition of Russians, and I'm really sorry if people get offended at this, but this is the way Cypriots generally used to refer to Russians before 2022. They would bung in Belarus and Ukraine, okay? So if you only have Russia, Ukraine and Belarus and exclude all of the others, because also Moldova is similar to Georgians, you come up with just over 23,000. So long-term residents from Russia, Ukraine and Belarus in the population census of 2021, 23,000 people. Now let's add the tourists on any given day. So I do the same exercise as I did last time. What does that give us? So if we have all former Soviet Union, we're getting nearly 1 million tourists. Then we multiply them by the average length of stay of Russians. We don't have data on any of the other countries. It's only Russia and a few other big tourist markets back then. We divide it by 365. That gives us 24,000 tourists from the former Soviet Union on any given day in Cyprus. So this will be a rotating group of people. And then we add the census. We know it was just under 39,000 in 2021. I knock off 1% per year, and it's just under 38,000 in 2019. So that gives us all former Soviet Union, including Georgia, Armenia, Baltics, who are now members of the EU. That gives us just under 62,000 in 2019. But as I say, I think that's kind of cheating. If we only do Russia, Ukraine and Belarus, what's the tourists on any given day? About 23,000. How many of them were living here as long-term residents in the census? 23,000. Knock off 1% per year, it's still about 23,000. So in total, residents of Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, about 23,000, plus tourists on any given day from these countries, another 23,000, gets us to about 46,000, okay? So to sum up, last time I said long-term residents according to the census, 16,000, tourists on any given day, 20,000, total Russians, 36,000. If you throw in Ukrainians and Belarusians, and again, apologies if I've offended anybody, you get 23,000 residents, 23,000 tourists on any given day, total 46,000. So now we're somewhere getting close to 50,000, but it's dropped since because of sanctions and war. That's it from me. Probably next time I'm going to have a look at productivity figures given the focus on wage indexation and what's known as COLA or ATA in Greek. And let's see how productive the economy has been in the past few years. This is my shameless plug. Every month I do a really deep dive into everything, the banking sector, the macroeconomy, the Cyprus problem, the energy, the gas, the interconnector, you name it, I do it. I love finding little nuggets that nobody else has found because nobody goes as deep as I do. Thank you for listening.